Hi, I'm Dean once again, and this week we are going to ask Dean 4 questions and see if he has anything except non-answers. Is, first of all, Donald Trump such a threat to America that he could actually usher in something like Nazism, something like fascism? All right, let's go to the first non-answer. The question was, what would Donald Trump bring to America in terms of a threat of a Hitlerian nature? Would he try to bring something like Nazism to America? A lot of people say that he's another Adolf Hitler. I don't think so. In the first place, the real Hitler, who came to power in 1933, came to power in Germany. And Germany had a lot of traditions that we don't have. The Germans had gone through a very long depression that hit really, really hard, and an inflation that was totally amazing. Instead of a newspaper costing 1 mark, 1 German mark, it cost 1 billion marks. That was inflation beyond the word inflation. Germany had economic problems that we did not have at the time, and that we certainly don't have now. And on top of that, Germany had a couple of years, or a couple of decades really, of a failed democratic experiment. And then lastly, on top of that, the whole philosophy, the political philosophy in Germany at that time was much different from the political philosophy in America. It featured, back in Germany, much more of a top-down approach to democracy than what we have in America. So in other words, we don't have as fertile a soil for anything like Hitler as the Germans had back in 1933 when the real Hitler came to power. Yes, we had a depression, we had other economic problems, but who came to power in America? FDR, Franklin D. Roosevelt. The American soil is just not the same as the German soil of that time in 1933, and a guy like Trump, who is no Hitler in the first place, would have a very hard time bringing something like Nazism to America. Actually, what he would be, most probably, is a guy who would enter the Oval Office, Donald Trump that is, and say, actually, I don't want this job. I don't want all this paperwork. I don't want all of this work. He would probably elect to appoint some sort of a real executive as the vice president and hand the job over to him. And then Trump could go out and build buildings and cut bridges and do other ceremonial things pretty much the way a king does. And as a matter of fact, maybe that's what we need. Not Donald Trump perhaps as king, but maybe we need a monarchy. We'd get a lot more tourists. The second question for Dean is, what will Hillary Clinton bring to America? What do we know about Hillary Clinton that would help us to predict what kind of president she might be? People left and right are complaining about Donald Trump, and they say that Hillary has experience in foreign affairs. Let's just ask the question, so what? And the non-answer is, we don't know. In foreign affairs, she voted for war. Trump has yet to do that. And people say, well, he wasn't a senator either. He didn't have the chance to vote for war. Well, Hillary had the chance to vote for peace in Iraq, and she didn't do that. And we also know that she has, let us say gently, told some untruths about her email and America's top secrets. The director of the FBI almost tore her apart recently, but Hillary was lucky. She had a husband who used to be president who could meet with the Attorney General. Now, the Attorney General and Bill probably will tell us, we didn't talk about Hillary's problems at all. Well, if they met, and if this was a move by Bill to help his wife, they didn't have to talk about politics. The mere fact of their meeting tells us everything we need to know. So is there room for skepticism there? There most certainly is. The third question is this: was Bernie Sanders right to endorse Hillary Clinton? There are a lot of questions there, and there are a lot of non-answers. In the first place, he was a good Democrat to do this, to come out and say, I will support the apparent nominee. And he did get Hillary, apparently, to promise a platform that looks a lot like the platform that Bernie Sanders would have run on. But the real question is, or the real non-answer is, party platforms really don't influence candidates very much once they're elected. Reality does. And again, going back to Hillary, what's the reality that she will be facing? She will be facing probably a Republican Senate, almost undoubtedly a Republican House of Representatives, and there's going to be very little room for maneuver for her. Maybe what we need is a brand new system, a new constitution, national elections, not an electoral college. Maybe we need a new country, in other words, a new constitution and a new country. Now that sounds a little bit crazy, but the fact is, this is the second United States of America. We've had that before, or something a lot like it. It was a federation. It came right after the Revolution, and it was abolished, and we got a new constitution. We can do that again. Maybe that would take care of some of the problems. The fourth question is, what is the state of the world? What can the United States do about it? And what indeed should the United States do about the world? Well, the truth is about foreign policy, or one truth about foreign policy, is that it helps to determine what life is like at home. If we're spending a lot of money on the military and on foreign policy, then does that take money away from infrastructure and from other beneficial things that we could be spending the money on here at home? So the question again is, what is the state of the world and what are we going to do about it? And again, there's a non-answer. For people on the left, it's very convenient to say we need to spend a lot less money on the military and spend more money on domestic spending. And then the opposite holds for people on the right. It's a really complicated question, which is why there's nothing but a non-answer probably. But the key thing is some countries are beginning to influence foreign affairs, the world, globalization, much more than they used to be able to do. Germany, Japan, and China especially. It looks like American power is not going to be able to extend over the whole world as it has ever since the end of World War II. China, Japan, and especially Germany are going to be influencing the world a lot more than they used to. So there's a lot of reason there to answer the question of what is the state of the world by saying, well, it's going to get more complicated and the American ability to influence events around the world is going to dwindle. So we need to come back home. But on the other hand, if we do that, then do we hand over power, once again, to Germany, Japan, and China more than we would like to? The old system, just to take Europe as an example, looked really volatile. We had a Cold War, Europe was split down the middle. We had over 200,000 American troops guarding West Europe up until the fall of the wall. And since then, thousands of American troops have come home, about half of them. So we've saved some money, perhaps. But on the other hand, does that make Europe less stable? Should we be actually sending more troops to Europe to make it more like it was during the Cold War when everything stayed stable for a very, very long time? Now that our troops have dwindled in number, it looks like the American government has reconsidered and is now sending troops, or planning to send many more troops, to countries in Eastern Europe that in the Cold War had no American troops in them. That's a little complicated. The whole point is that during the Cold War, Russia had a bunch of countries next to it with no American troops. Now, under the new system, Russia's going to have countries near to it or next to it with American troops. Is that going to make things more stable, or is that going to make the Russians so angry that things get volatile again? And in China or near China, we have the same question. Do we send more ships there to let the Chinese know that we are actually in charge? Or do we come back and build more bridges and roads here at home? It's a tough question to ask. So foreign policy, like domestic policy, looks more and more complicated. And again, those are four questions that have very, very few answers.